This day in sports history.
A member of the Sports History Network. Get more info and find more podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. And one of those podcasts you'll find is Pigskin Dispatch, and a new episode just dropped. Host Darren Hayes caught up with Pro Football Hall of Fame player and coach Dick LeBeau. LeBeau's got a new book coming out about his life in the NFL and the 2008 Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Check out this fantastic interview on Pigskin Dispatch, and you can find Pigskin Dispatch wherever you get your podcasts. It's July 9th, and on this day in 2006, Zinedine Zidane, playing in his final match as a professional, lost his head and sent it into the chest of Marco Matterazi. It was the 2006 World Cup final between France and Italy, and both of these men played into the early goals of this match. First, in the 6th minute, Matterazi fouled Florent Malouda in the box, setting up Zidane with a PK chance. His cheeky chip hit the underside of the crossbar and bounced past the line for the first goal of the game. Matterazi made up for his error in the 19th minute, redirecting a corner kick with a beautiful header. The game stayed that way through the end of regulation and into extra time. In extra time, Gigi Buffon made a brilliant save on a Zidane shot, getting fingertips on a header to tip it just over the bar. Late in the second extra time period and closing in on penalty kicks, play shifted from the French end to midfield. In an off-the-ball incident not seen by the referee or either assistant referee, Zidane turned and delivered a powerful headbutt to the chest of Matterazi, who crumpled to the turf. After play was stopped due to a foul on the other half of the field, the ref looked for any information about what had just happened. The Italians were screaming for a card. After talking to the fourth official, the center ref showed a straight red to Zidane, and he was sent off. Asked later what had provoked the reaction, Zidane said that Matterazi had insulted his mother, his sister, and then called him a dirty terrorist. When questioned for his side of the story, Matterazi said he insulted Zidane's sister, but would not have dared said anything about his mother, and also said he did not call him a dirty terrorist. Lip readers were actually brought in after the match to determine what he had actually said, but it could not be conclusively determined. The game ended in a 1-1 tie, went to penalty kicks, and Italy bested France 5-3 in PKs to win the 2006 World Cup. It was an ignominious end to Zidane's final game as a member of the French national team and his final game as a professional. Interestingly, the 2006 World Cup set a record for the most cards issued throughout the tournament. There were a total of 345 yellow cards and 28 red cards handed out, which included the round of 16 match between Portugal and the Netherlands, where the referee in that match handed out 16 yellow cards and 4 reds in a match that became known as the Battle of Nuremberg. In 1977, it was a battle of 2 Americans at the British Open. This became known as the Duel in the Sun, and it featured Jack Nicklaus and Tom Watson. Watson was having a pretty good year. He won the Masters in April, finished in a tie for 7th at the U.S. Open, and here on the final day of the Open Championship in Turnberry, Scotland, he was locked in a dogfight with the Golden Bear. Both golfers shot third-round 65s to separate themselves from the rest of the field, and they started the final round all square. Nicklaus led by 3 shots after the third hole, though, but Watson fought back to tie it up by the 8th. Nicklaus kept applying pressure, and he led by a shot with 4 holes to play. But a Watson birdie on 15 tied it again, and then he made birdies at 17 and 18 to win by a shot to take the Open Championship. Nicklaus always had a flair for the dramatic, with the uncanny ability to hit clutch putts. On the 18th, after hitting his drive in the rough and slashing his second out of the tall grass to just the front of the green, he rolled in a 36-foot birdie putt to force Watson to make his or face a playoff. Fortunately for Watson, he'd hit his second shot to 2 feet, and of course he made it. Have you ever heard the term drive for show and putt for dough? Well, that very truthful statement was credited to golfer Bobby Locke, who won the 1949 Open Championship at Royal St. George's on this day. He battled Ireland's Harry Bradshaw in a 36-hole playoff. Well, it wasn't much of a battle. Locke won by 12 shots, winning the first of his 4 claret jugs. Locke was an incredible putter, though he could be agonizingly deliberate at times, standing over a crucial putt. He admitted that he kept his putter in bed with him and seldom let it out of his sight. In 1932, New England got a football team, but it's not the one you're thinking about. George Marshall was a laundry tycoon from D.C., but he was awarded a franchise for Boston, and to make things easy, the team was called the Boston Braves, just like the Major League Baseball team, and they played in the same stadium. After finishing 4-4-2 in their first season, Marshall decided on some changes. First, he got a new head coach, a Native American named William Lone Star Dietz. Marshall changed the nickname to Redskins as a recognition to Dietz and changed the colors to burgundy and gold. And finally, he decided to play their games at Fenway Park. But Boston's football team could never really attract much attention from the locals. So in 1937, Marshall moved his team to Washington, D.C., eventually becoming the Washington Commanders after a rebrand in 2022. In 1978, it was the end of a franchise as the Houston Aeros of the World Hockey Association folded. Now, I've talked about the Aeros a couple of times on this podcast already. They were one of the most successful franchises in the WHA, and they had a good fan base. But the league and the teams that made up the WHA were in financial trouble at this point. Talks with the NHL about a merger had been underway for several months, but it became clear that the NHL did not have any interest in a Sunbelt franchise. Instead of burn money in another season in the WHA with no hope for a future beyond it, the Aeros folded up the tents instead. And on this day in 2003, an error in judgment led to an eventual assault charge for Pittsburgh Pirate Randall Simon. The Pirates were playing at Milwaukee on this day, and in the middle of the sixth inning, the Brewers put on their typical sausage race. You know what I'm talking about, right? They got 4 contestants. They're all dressed up in costumes. One is a brat, another one's dressed up as a hot dog. There's a Polish sausage and an Italian sausage. They've added chorizo now, but on this day it was just the 4. Well, the racing sausages took off, and it was a close race as they sprinted by the Pirates' dugout along the third baseline. Well, Randall Simon had a bat in his hand, and as the Italian sausage went by, he tapped it on the head. The sausage went down and took the hot dog with it. It took a few moments, but eventually the Italian and the hot dog were able to get to their feet and make it to the finish line. But television coverage caught the bop on the head, and outrage followed. Well, after the game, Simon was arrested by Milwaukee police and then released after paying a $432 fine. He was also suspended by Major League Baseball for 3 games. The person inside the Italian sausage costume on that night was 19-year-old Mary Block, who really didn't see what all the fuss was about. Her actual noggin inside the costume was a good 12 to 16 inches away from where the bat tap had occurred, and she was not upset about it at all. Instead of righteous indignation and suing for millions, she only asked for the bat and for it to be autographed by Simon. Time now for today's non-sports fun fact. Not all oranges are orange. Oranges imported from Brazil can be green, but they get treated with ethylene gas, which is natural, before going to the market because, well, Americans will not buy a green orange. That's all for now. Have a super day, and I'll be back tomorrow with another edition of This Dish. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.